Okay, Mary Lou has been, according to what we've talked about over the last like 3 or 4 years, has been an activist against the system, and especially in Maracopa County, with the mental abuse system, where they put people in prison and they they actually shouldn't be there. They should be properly medicated. And I think Mary Lou could go on with the story. Do you agree, Mary Lou?
Hi, Allison. Well, it's interesting. I don't hear myself called an activist too often, but we actually have a nonprofit called David's Hope, and the focus of our work is to reduce the numbers of people with mental illness and addictions that become incarcerated in Arizona.
Okay.
So that work entails a lot, and our primary focus is those with mental illness and addictions. But of course, with our criminal justice system being what it is here in Arizona, and really in many states across the country, it's a real tall order making headway.
You know, I think anybody that would be in solitary confinement would be like mentally abused, and it would take a lot. Say myself as a tennis pro, falsely arrested, and totally normal, okay, and not taking my case out of control. It just is overcrowding prisons. When you get 33 cops that make over money, and then it's unjustified. How can they justify them at P.F. Chang's? It's not Dunkin' Donuts anymore. I mean, it's a number. We need to do something about the overcrowding prisons, especially not just Maracopa County. It's a big business. When I go to Maracopa, when I go to, say, Quality Dairy, they're nice, or Tom's grocery store, they're nice. They make $8 an hour. They give you your milk. They wait on you. They make little money. These cops, they're controlling. Could you give me a little more information on how the prison control system has become out of control? And if you were in, say, 23 hours a day in a prison system and not even guilty, and you haven't seen the judge, how would that feel? Would that make you crazy?
Well, Allison, you're bringing up a lot of different points. I'm not exactly sure where to start, but the criminal justice system is, I know you know all the statistics about the United States in general being the highest incarcerator in the world. And Arizona is a strict enforcer of mandatory sentencing laws. So, one of the things we're advocating for is a change to mandatory sentencing. We'd like to see judges regain the ability to have discretion in sentencing so that they can make allowances to people that oftentimes, of course, in our work, people that have mental illness really don't have criminal intent when they do various things that are technically a violation of the law, yet they're forced to plead guilty in courts of law in order to get on with the case, and sometimes they get probation, sometimes they don't, but with mandatory sentencing laws, these things add up, and if it's a felony, it's very serious. Now, solitary confinement, a whole different issue, of course. At David's Hope, solitary confinement is one of the campaigns, one of our really most important campaigns that we're running this year, and we'll be running it really until maybe the end of time. I don't know how long it's going to take us to end this practice, but we believe that there's enough research out there, evidence-based practice and research with experts across the country that show that the use of long-term isolation is damaging, not only to people that already have mental impairments, but to people that don't. So the United States Senate just actually had a hearing just recently with Senator Dick Durbin that headed that up, and it is coming to national attention. Arizona was one of the first states to use Supermax, and actually was a model for Pelican Bay. So ours is, we are told from experts that have looked at our solitary units that ours are some of the worst in the country. And I think you know that Amnesty International was denied access here last year to enter into our solitary units, our Supermax prisons, so that they could do their own independent review. So we have a big road ahead of us, and yes, it's a lot easier for a person with mental illness to end up in jail or prison than it is to get treatment, and that's what we're trying to change.
Well, for example, Judge Donahue is a psychiatrist, and he ended up as a mess. I do know the lawyer that took care of his case, and it doesn't make sense. He was a psychiatrist and he was a judge, and he tried to stick up for the system. I mean, Michael Manning took care of his case. He hid out. There was another case in Fountain Hills. These sheriffs, these $8 an hour workers, they will stalk you, and it's not fair. I mean, for a child abuse case, and we all know the case of the county worker. The sheriffs have more power, money, and control because of that little badge they make. I have hours that I couldn't make. My dad's a lawyer, my sister, her husband, more money, and unless you die, you cannot make it through probation. They lie. Jamie Noland, Judge McVeigh, Terry Clark, and I will make names because I can. I'm off. I'm done. Judge Weinstein, I wrote every day. Janet Napolitano finally got me off. I got a new probation officer. Thank gosh, the Weekly World News, because I was a model, got me off of, I'd still be in prison. And I'm going to name one name, Camille Tilley. her daughter is still in prison in Gloria Dodge. I mean, they don't do anything wrong. They're innocent. Why are these people? They're not mentally ill. But if you put someone in solitary 23/7, I was there. They feed you quail. That's not cooked. It's so disgusting. Upper middle class nurses. If you don't know what you're doing, I was out of state. They get the out-of-staters. You gotta really be careful in Maracopa County. You can pay a lawyer. I got lucky. I got Daniel and Sarah. Oh my gosh. He was a lifesaver. And I will thank him till forever. I got him from the Phoenix New Times. And I gave him a puppy for payment. And I still want to thank him. Because I didn't have any money. And he lost his bar license because he saved my life. You can't. And my family kept trying to pay money and money and money and money, trying to pay lawyers like Steve Dichter from Brian Cave, who knew Michael McVeigh, and put me back in jail. That's baloney. You know what? They go play golf. And they know that they can get more money from my dad, my poor little dad. And Daniel and Sarah lost his license for protecting me. And that's why I went to the media. Dr. Jack L. Potts, a psychiatrist, another one. He wants to put his kids through college. He backed off. He's in my book. I'm an author. You have to be careful when you work in Maracopa County. I mean, he's protecting his children, but I lost my kid, you know, and taxpayers, $30 billion are paying for 300 people like me and I wasn't mentally ill. They took away my career. Deb Jones, Trish O'Connor, Terry L. Clip, Michael L. McVeigh, Anthony Rogers, and I will name names because they never got fired. It's all on dispatch. My daughter was safe at the neighbors. I got it in writing. I did everything they said. I didn't even go to jail until 1 year later. Does anyone else have anything to say?
Sure, Allison. If you don't mind, Karen, could I ask you a couple of questions? I mean, Mary Lou, I'm sorry.
Okay. Sure. I'm right here. I'm listening.
Well, one thing that I really liked about our conversation last night is that what you're offering is solutions to the problem, and there's so few of those around. It seems like what you were presenting was best practices for sheriffs, for prosecutors, and that makes a lot of sense. Do you think you could speak to that issue a little bit and tell us about what would it look like when these best practices have been implemented, and how would the county function better under those types of best practices? Intervention training, I think, was one of the things that you mentioned.
Sure, David. Thank you. Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to do is bring alternatives and new choices in our criminal justice system here, which is intricately intertwined with our mental health system, unfortunately, since so many people with mental illness and addictions do end up in our jails and prisons. One thing that you can see across the country that is coming down actually from the federal level is a really very positive thing, which is an emphasis on folks that are coming out of prison and re-entering our communities. You know, you'll hear it spoken of as re-entry, and there are different coalitions and efforts going on across the nation having to do with that. Well, one of the things that I like to say to people, kind of half as a chuckle, but very, very serious actually, is that it would help if you didn't torture our prisoners and then release them and expect them to be successful in the communities. So, you know, it is important to us how our inmates are treated. A lot of folks think that, well, you know, they're locked up for a reason and they get what they deserve. But the fact of the matter is that we believe human dignity and respect is something that each individual has, and that is given to them by God, and that no man has the right to take that away. And we believe that when our inmates and those in our jails and prisons are treated as human beings and given hope rather than being decimated by a very brutal system of containment and management that we see being used in our Department of Corrections, we believe that's a number one step for bringing successful reentry into the community. So, of course, we're going to be addressing issues in the prisons.
Well, okay, I have to step in here. One of my documentaries was John Lacone, and he was a correction officer. And he said, treat prisoners correctly. And it's like, the better you treat them, the better they are. And this is not how Sheriff Joe treats prisoners. Oh my gosh, I was there in all 4 jails, okay? And I'm a victim, and I was innocent. I mean, they didn't care about my kid. CPS never came. They didn't care about my 3 dogs, my house. I lost everything. They didn't care about my tennis career. Taxpayers are paying up now to, like I said, $30 billion, because I'm only one person. They just had to pay $40,000 for my daughter to go to school. I was innocent, and I have proof. And what my main point is, why did they take away my career? Because what do I do all day? I go to the MAC, I play tennis 4 days a week. I don't want to teach tennis. They kicked my dog. The probation officers kicked my dogs. They're mean. I was on intensive probation. They made me take a plea. They say, you do the crime, you do the time. But I went to the Hamptons and taught tennis, and it was a false, bogus plea agreement. You have no idea what they did to my life. Why would they let a felon 3, and it's all in dispatch, it's opposite of child abuse. Why would they let a felon 3 child abuser go teach tennis to Madonna's kids tennis? When I taught tennis in Malibu, I taught tennis to Johnny Carson, Merv Griffin. Never one accident. I never beat my kids. This was a bogus call, and Sheriff Joe and the whole system knew it. They needed to. It was dropped and then brought back up by Sheriff Anthony Rogers, and it cost taxpayers right now over $1 million. And it cost my family money, and it cost my family's life money. And I'm only one person, and I know so many people that they've done this to. So this isn't teaching someone a lesson. Mary Lou, you have to realize, I never did drugs. I have a college degree. I don't drink. I don't smoke pot to excess. I don't smoke pot. I don't.
And you don't drink to excess, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I've had. They made me do 250 UAs. I have proof that you can't make it through probation in Maracopa County. My sister flew out. She's an attorney. They were going to throw me back in Tin City, and there were more hours in the day than I could make it through. That they were going to throw me back in jail in one more probation violation. And I had a car, family. My family moved out. My dad's an attorney. I had help from upper middle class people. You have no idea. I had that Sheriff Joe Arpaio is the worst sheriff in history. Now, if I had to ride the bus to get to all their, I couldn't teach tennis to children. I had to tell everyone I was a child abuser when I wasn't. That's embarrassing. I'm still upset 12 years later. I don't know whose side you're on, but in the mental abuse, I got a full ride at CMU in Michigan. If I were anyone, I would never go to Arizona. I went to therapy under their insurance, under Access. And Eric Voigtman, he goes, I don't even want to run a yellow light. He was so scared. It's so scary there. My daughter is traumatized for the rest of her life. You don't even have to do anything wrong that Sheriff Anthony Rogers lied and lied. And just to get money, I had a brand new house with a doggy door. And Judge McVeigh knew CPS was never involved because it wasn't child abuse. They said it was sleeting and snowing, and my kid could have died. And the public defender was brand new, Jamie Nolan.
Well, Allison, my heart goes out to you. Many of us, and that's why I got involved in this. Our family was thrown into this type of horrendous situation, you know, different from yours, but in the same way, very unjust situation. And that's really what propelled us to do the work we're doing. There's a lot that can be done that is being done with, you know, it's funny when you say you're not sure what side I'm on. I'm on the side of justice, and I'm on the side of reform, and I'm on the side of making our criminal justice system become a system that really brings rehabilitation to people that do make mistakes. I know in your case, you know, that you don't really believe there was any kind of crime committed. But no. There are people that do commit crimes, and we're fighting for them as well. We're fighting for people that have not been perfect, that have done things, and we think they deserve a second chance. There's 300 jobs in Arizona that you can't do if you have a felony. You can't even be a barber, even if you've had a charge such as, well, you know, in Arizona, just about everything's a felony. Possession of just the smallest amount of marijuana is a felony, and if you have a charge like that, you can't be a barber.
I've never smoked pot in my life.
I'm just speaking to the broader system. You can't be a barber for the rest of your life if you've ever been charged with possessing marijuana. Does that make sense? Just we're trying to confront our public officials. We actually, I know you spoke a lot about probation. Our Maracopa County Probation Department has a lot of good in it, especially they're outstanding in the department that deals with people with mental illness. They're really one of the leaders in the country. So we'd like to see diversion. Our mental health court, to me, it's a good thing, but it sort of has a long ways to go because they're not really doing diversion. They help people with probation violations and such, and competency hearings.
Well, then they should have. I never hit a kid over the head with a tennis racket in my life. They said that.
You've obviously been traumatized by our system, and that's one of the things that we are talking about. David had asked about solutions. There's a big push right now.
That creates mental illness, because I started teaching tennis at the young age of 15, and when Trish O'Connor from 32nd Street, and she made fun of me, and she said that in front of my father, and no safety was number one. I taught tennis all over Phoenix, Arizona. I taught tennis all over the world, the Bahamas. Safety. The kids held their rackets. And you're telling me the probation, Trish O'Connor and Deb Jones and Doug Pilsner, why would they ruin my career after letting me go to the Hamptons and teach tennis to 250 kids tennis? And Judge McVeigh and Terry L. Clark, why would they lie about a plea agreement and ruin my career? And I lost my house, I lost my SUV, I lost Hicks, and why my daughter had to switch schools 4 times, and it wasn't CPS.
There's a lot of evil, and there's a lot of corruption in our system. I'm not saying that there's not. There's a lot of corruption.
I was the head Wilson rep. I sold over. I worked with Sports Authority. I sold the most rackets in the history. I sold the most. The name of my camp was Racket Rookies. Why would they take that away from me? And my daughter got to go to work with me. Why would on earth my daughter was safe at the neighbors because of one phone call? There was no alcohol, drugs, nothing in my house. What,
Allison, what we're doing is, I mean, I don't mean not to have empathy for your story, but there are hundreds and thousands of people who have similar.
Why didn't Jamie Nolan come out as a public defender? She was paid by the public, by the taxpayers, to come out. She was a lazy, I'm not going to swear, she was paid by taxpayers. She was out to get me. And she got me. She made me take the false plea agreement, which there's no such thing as a felony diversion plea to go to the Hamptons and teach tennis to 250 kids. And I got to go that summer, and then I got nailed. Do you not get this false plea agreement? And I got nailed.
I see agreements like this where people do plead guilty in order to get their charges settled. We see it all the time. My question to Allison, I understand you've been devastated by our what's happened out here, and I totally, my heart goes out to you. I guess my question that I'd have to you is, what are you hoping for now? I know with my experience in my family, because of what had happened to my son who with mental illness in our criminal justice system, I wanted to reach out to make sure that didn't happen to others. What happened to him didn't happen to other people. Is that what you're about doing now by doing the show and things?
I would like Gloria. She's one of my really favorite clients. I would like her son not to take the plea agreement. I know he's innocent. He was only there to help people. David has talked to Gloria, and he was a kid at a pool party. And the new Andrew Thomas is a goner. For 16 more years, I'm sticking up for Gloria. And David, would you like to say something about Gloria?
Well, I'd like to hear a little bit more from Mary Lou about the reforms that she'd mentioned. We kind of got off the subject, but it seems to me you brought up an awful lot of very valid points, Allison. And one was about presently it seems like our prison system is more about retribution. It's about punishing lawbreakers, and there's really not much in the way of reform. Now, I'm sure Mary Lou has some ideas of how we could have greater emphasis on reforming, on prisoner reentry programs, on preparing people for life outside of prison. Mary Lou, would you like to say something about that?
Well, yes, absolutely. One of our efforts right now that we're involved in is promoting crisis intervention training for first responders. We're also including the entire community really in this effort. And I think in Allison's case, if a properly trained officer had come out at the time when she was initially had the initial altercation, or I don't mean altercation, but involvement where the police officer showed up at her door, this could have headed off the entire thing, and just shows you how valuable proper training for our officers and our sheriffs is. And we're in the process now of evaluating our law enforcement training that we have across the state. Maricopa County, the goal there, that from the officer that runs their crisis intervention training, his goal is to train 20% of the officers. Now, we don't like that number. We'd like to see all the officers trained, and not only the officers that are on the beat, but the ones that are behind the desk and administration. We think everybody should know how to go into a situation and make the right decisions, not to cause more problems than already are there, but to de-escalate the situation. And in doing so, properly trained officers can divert huge numbers of folks that would normally land in our jails and possibly our prisons. So that's one of our major goals this year, and we'll be doing it until we can really see an effect in the system, increasing the number of officers that are properly trained for folks in crisis. Now, those is not just for people with mental illness. My understanding of Allison's story, that there was a bit of a crisis going on when she first had that interaction with law enforcement. So a properly trained officer could have de-escalated that situation, and lives could have been saved. Lives could, charges didn't have to come. And the other point of that, we'd like to see more, the second approach that we have is to see more expansion and opportunities for diversion. Of course, we're looking at people with mental illness, but we want it really across the board. Cases like Allison's, when perhaps maybe the officer didn't handle it like they should have, and they do get to court, a properly trained prosecutor that's looking to really do justice for our community would look at those charges and perhaps decide that those charges weren't the most appropriate. And we'd like to see a lot more done in this area. We need our prosecutors to be on board with us. We think it will keep our community safer, keep families together, not destroy our wage earners that are taking care of their children, allow them to stay in the homes, and do a lot in the way of reducing the numbers of lives that are decimated through interaction with our justice system. So those are two of the areas that we're going to be working on. Also, we're working on programs in the prisons that will incentivize inmates to have good behavior. Our prisons now, our state prisons, of course, we didn't even mention private prisons, which is a whole nother ball of wax, but we have private prisons here in Arizona that we're actually the only state that I know of that's actually increasing not only private prisons, but we're also building more supermax prisons, which everybody knows is damaging to folks to be in supermax. So we'd like to see prisons that are, as you mentioned, David, rehabilitative and have programming that a person that comes out is going to be able to succeed, not be permanently damaged by the treatment that they receive while they're in there. So we'd like to see things like increase of a good time, where if an inmate is behaving well, they're rewarded with perhaps somewhat of an earlier release than they would have had. They've done some of this in the past. We'd like to see that even increase even more. So what I always ask, and what I say in a lot of my speaking engagements when I talk, is that I'd like to ask the question, how does it help to take a man's hope away? And I think when you think about that, you'll agree with me that the best thing we can do for our communities is to restore hope to those whose lives have had some of these bumps and ups and downs, and reach out a hand. And we see passionate people everywhere. There's a lot of passionate people, or compassionate, I should say. There's compassionate people in our Department of Corrections, in our probation department, in our sheriff's department, and then there's those with none as well. And so we want to increase the training, promote evidence-based practices that are clinically sound, and we don't think they can argue with us.
Evidence-based practices. That's another one of those better practices that I was talking about. Could you expand on that a little bit and see how the sheriff's department and the prosecutors could implement evidence-based practices as opposed to the system they have right now, which seems to be essentially they identify the bad guy, and then all of the resources of the court and the sheriff's department is all about getting the bad guy. And we found through the Innocence Project that sometimes that bad guy is misidentified. And as a matter of fact, it appears that about a third of the rapists in jail right now are quite possibly innocent. And that's only those people that are able to clear themselves through DNA evidence. And there's only a small percentage of people where DNA evidence is actually applicable to their case. That leaves a huge amount of people that probably are just the wrong guy, who somebody was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or was misidentified. In Anthony LaPointe's case, it just appears that
he's so innocent.
Yes, apparently he was. He's
a hero.
He heard somebody knocking his door down. He'd already been assaulted and badly injured, and he picked up a table leg to defend himself against an intruder, and it turned out to be the police. Well, naturally, the police assume that there's a big 240-pound guy with tattoos on his body and in an aggressive sort of posture, and now that they have identified the bad guys, then all of the resources of the sheriff's department and the prosecutors are all geared towards prosecuting that person. And even if it requires perverting the system, covering up evidence, if we really had an evidence-based procedure, these better procedures or better implementations, better practices, best practices, then hopefully we can circumvent many of these things. And there seems to be a perverse incentive. Right now, the incentive seems to be we have private prisons. They make a great deal of money. As a matter of fact, it's one of the few growth industries in the United States. And frankly, they seem to be a little jealous of losing their good customers when somebody is released. Oftentimes, they just simply dump somebody off in front of the prison with a sweatsuit or, a suit of clothes, and the last word is, okay, Joe, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Don't want to lose a good customer. And for the prosecutor, the incentive seems to be how many people they can prosecute. Unless we're actually able to change the incentive, if we're going to provide some incentive for the prosecutor and the police to to act in a more rational manner, act in a manner that is directed to a better outcome, because we can clearly see that the outcomes that we have right now are not very good, just from an economic point of view. We're paying, in Michigan, it's about $40,000 per year per prisoner. Now, you can send somebody to a top college like Yale or Harvard for about half that. Just from a purely economic view, even if you're not concerned with the morality of putting somebody in jail who might be innocent, or the morality of putting somebody in jail for amount of time, a punishment that is totally out of the scale of anything that person might have done. But anyways, Mary Lou, can you talk about best practices and how we might be able to make some reforms in that area?
Well, David, sure. I'm not a clinician, so I'm not going to be real technical on this. But
sure.
Basically, best practices are proven methods that have been documented to show an increase in success of folks who have been beneficiaries of these practices. So say if I'm working with someone with a heroin addiction, it would be best practices to treat that addiction. Now, if they're out stealing because of their addiction, we'd be getting at the root of their of what's causing the criminal behavior. So, we see that revolving door, like you said. There's definitely a revolving door in and out of our jails and prisons. And if you go to our website, I've got under reentry on our important documents page, you can see across the country rates of recidivism. And though the states where we have the most brutal, the most the systems that are really all about punishing, like you said, I really like the way you said that, David, that it's not about rehabilitating, it's about punishing. And in those types of systems that are like Arizona's systems are not the most successful systems. Whether it has to do with keeping people in long-term isolation with no concern for their mental health, or whether it comes to not treating medical conditions while they're locked up, not to mention the trauma, such as Alison has eloquently spoke about, that happened through her experiences. Traumatizing folks like this is not going to save us money, and it's not going to keep us any safer. So the evidence-based practices can be used across the board, whether it's with prosecutors, and this is what we're trying to do is work to make our systems collaborate with each other. We want our mental health system, we want our criminal justice system to talk to each other. We see people that go to prison because of their illness, and then when they get to prison, they're not treated for their illness. Now, how does that make sense? So I guess an easy way to think of evidence-based practices is just really like if you think of a medical model, what would be sound, what would be, using the best knowledge that we have, the best knowledge out there, what will get us the best outcomes. So we're looking at things that are outcome-based, and we're forcing our systems to give us some honest answers about why they're doing what they're doing.
Tremendous. And the one thing that voters and taxpayers seem to respond to is the cost of doing things. It seems that what the voters really want is somebody who's going to be the best steward of their money. And clearly, the system that we have right now is tremendously wasteful. If we were to look at any type of cost-benefit analysis for the way that things are being done, for example, in Maracopa County, as opposed to more progressive sort supportive systems, then clearly dollars spent for a prisoner reentry program are a tremendous investment as opposed to dollars spent for keeping people in jail, caged up the rest of their life. That the cost of operating the system is absolutely enormous. And in a declining economy, how can we continue to keep up these practices that are breaking the system?
That's exactly right, and I couldn't have said it any better. That's the message that we're really out here preaching. Now, we unfortunately, that's what our, we want to look at the human aspect of it, the human rights aspect of abuses and neglect that take place. But if you don't care about that, care about what it's going to cost you when these people come back to our communities, and they come back sicker and more damaged than they were before they had gone into our systems.
Well, anybody would. I mean, a normal person would. I mean,
sure.
If you ran a yellow light, if you were arrested by Anthony Rogers and you were innocent and a famous tennis pro, you're not going to be normal. It's going to take years. And even if you didn't lose your kid, I never lost my kid.
You know, the system is actually more brutal for people who are innocent. Think about what an innocent person has to go through. And there's absolutely nothing for somebody who's innocent. In fact, there's nothing for somebody that has been released from prison because they've found to be innocent. There's actually programs for ex-offenders, but for people that have been released from prison because it turned out, say, through the Innocence Project, DNA evidence, there are no programs out there at all to help them. There is sometimes innocent people have been able to sue the system for, and I understand in Maracopa County, it's worked out to an enormous amount of money. That should be a wake-up call. That should be an indication to the taxpayers and the public officials that it's broken.
It trickles off friends, the upper middle class, friends, family. It breaks everybody.
It touches everybody's lives. Yes, there's probably nobody that is not touched by this tragedy. Somebody is going to have somebody in their family that has been arrested for marijuana. You know, a niece, a nephew, an uncle, brother,
not marijuana.
a father.
A false arrest.
A false arrest, absolutely.
Child abuse. I go play tennis. I can't. I look on the court, and I'm still traumatized. We're not talking drugs.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking a profession.
Right. There's an unseen cost that really is hard to evaluate. That is the cost of lives are ruined, and what kind of benefit could they have been to society rather than being a burden? And of course, a lot of people end up on welfare because they can't work after they've been traumatized. They're barred from the
$200,000 a year. And it threw me. I don't know when we need to end the show, but people need to be aware. That's what the show's about. It's not about drugs. It's not about alcohol. It's not about cheating, lying, scheming, scamming. It's about losing your career and loving your job. I love teaching tennis. I love my job.
Well, as you mentioned, Allison, we are getting close to the end of the hour. If we have any last comments, then perhaps we should bring those out now. And we have about another 5 minutes. Do you have any more questions you'd like to ask our guest?
I'm sorry, did you say you were going to have a question? Yes.
Okay.
Well, sure. Well, I would. What I like about what you're talking about, Mary Lou, is we were talking about solutions, and there's so much talk about what's wrong with the system, but there are so few people out there that really do have solutions to the problem. And what you said makes a lot of sense. In the last 5 minutes, could you wrap up? How would things look if we were to implement your policies, your solutions, the crisis intervention training, the prison reform, the best evidence-based practices? How would this look once we have implemented these things?
Well, what we'd like to do, one of the main things we'd like to do is, of course, reduce the number of people that we have in our jails and prisons. So our prisons and jails would be reduced greatly in the number of inmates they contain if we get our way. Now, where those people would be in treatment and receiving whatever tools, and they'd be equipped with what they need to help them live successful lives, whether it's in overcoming addictions, whether it's education so that they can get gainful employment and be successful the way Allison was successful in her career. We would like to see our money that's being just poured profusely into building new prisons. We're building right now, they've taken $50 million to build 500 new Supermax beds, which we don't need a one. And yet we have cuts to, we have no health care, we have education being decimated, you name it. Human services and help for the poor, the sick, and disabled is a low priority in our state, whereas funding for corrections always seems to be first to get what they want and what they ask for. We think that's backwards. So we'd like to see education be top priority, health care be top priority, that including mental health treatment and treatment for addictions. We need co-occurring disorder treatment for people that have both a mental disorder and an addiction, which is very, very common. And those people are filling up our jails and prisons. They're not getting the treatment that they need while they're incarcerated, and they're going to be back in. So we're asking for, we're going to get at the root of what's causing these issues. And we want our systems to collaborate together so that when we have someone who's reentering all the time, often on just low-level things, find out what's causing this person to fail over and over again and give them support.
I have to disagree. I disagree on the probation department because there's no way to get through probation. It's a system designed for failure. You can do all you want. I'm an upper middle class graduate. My sister's an attorney. You're on the wrong track.
Well, it seems like the probation system is on the wrong track. It's designed, designed, and the incentive is to make people fail, not to make them succeed.
You want to know why? Because $25 a minute for a phone call, and they get you. Don't you understand?
Yes, it's a perverse economic incentive to keep the system that is draining our economy operating.
And this is my last statement. I was in 4 different times And all my friends kept paying money and money and money and money. $40,000 in treatment when I was anorexic. And if you think for 1 second that Sheriff Joe puts a dead mouse in the Lambo bag and in that location, never come back, go to Afghanistan, you know what? You're wrong. I had friends riding buses trying to find jobs and get through the system and do things right. My friend Kathy, she tried her hardest. She had 3 grandkids. And this is on tape. And I'm going full force. Maracopa County is wrong. And it's going to spread. Mary Lou, you're on the wrong track. I hate to discriminate, but I was there. They need that. It's not about. I wasn't on drugs. You know what? Go on diet pills. 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 I had 250 clean UAs. My parents got in a car wreck. They almost died. Darn it. I still had to drive clear across town and take my kid out of school. You have no idea what they did to me. And I almost ended up in prison. Don't you understand yet what the system designed for failure is? If they took my daughter in and her hip and knees are ruined forever, darn it, I'm so upset right now. Can you stick up for that county?
I'm not sure, Ellen.
One last word for you. One last word for you. You stick up for Sheriff Joe Arpaio in Maracopa County. You need to get your head screwed on straight. And all I have to say is they are wrong, and they need, the system is designed for failure. Okay? You want to be designed for failure? Then go for it.
Well, I don't think that's really what Mary Lou is saying. I'm not sure what type of a system that you have in mind, Allison. I was going to ask Mary Lou to give us her contact information and her website address before we end this program, but if it's up to you, Mary Lou. We could end this program right now, or I can give you as much time as you'd like to speak, and if you'd like to discuss any of these things, we have the time to do that. What would you like to do?
Well, sure. I'll give you my information. I'm not sure how what I said was so disappointing to Allison, but I am trying to make changes to our system the best way that I know how. So you can reach us at davidshopeaz.org, and you can see our website there and take a look and decide for yourselves about what we're doing. And you can also email me at marylou@davidshopeaz.org, and you can our phone number there is easily found on our website. So I appreciated the opportunity to be on the show today, and I appreciated hearing from Alison and meeting you, David. So thanks to you both.
Well, thank you. You've been a great guest, and this is tremendous information, and I really like all the work that you've done, and I applaud your efforts. I think we've just barely scratched the surface of a very, very large problem, and if you'd like to be on the show again, I think that there's much more that we could discuss.
And Mary Lou, I didn't mean to be like very rude, but I think you need to open up your mind and take a look, because it's a severe problem with the probation department. They are not. It's not. It's a system designed for failure.
It does seem like the probation department is just as non-functional as the sheriff's department and the courts.
And you seem to protect them.
Well, do you have some thoughts on how how they might improve their processes at the probation department, and how we might have better outcomes if we were to implement some new changes?
Well, that's great, but you know what? I was there, and you need to wake up call.
Well, I think we're all aware that the system is corrupt, and that there are many, many, many opportunities for improvement in the courts and in the sheriff's department and in the probation department. In fact, it must be frustrating if you're a good, well-meaning person in any one of those organizations.
It ruined my daughter's life.
David and Alison, I'm sorry, but I've got to end the call. So I very much appreciate the opportunity to be with you, though.
Thanks so much for taking the time to join our call tonight, and I hope we can talk again.
Okay, thanks a million to you both.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye now.
Good night.